So Mel Tucker is currently the leader in the odds to become the next head coach at LSU. Why that is, I have absolutely no clue. Absolutely none. I understand why you might want to hire him, because he's coached at your university before, and he coached a national championship level defense at Georgia, coached there several years, and he's proven, and he's been everywhere. I mean, he's been in the NFL. He's been in college. He's been with good teams. He's been with not so good teams. But so far it looks like those not so good teams, he turns them around in one way or another. An example is Michigan State right now. He's doing a great job. Keep in mind, I am a Michigan fan. So the fact that I am saying this should tell you he is doing a very good job. But he is the current favorite, and I want to read an article or two to you guys discussing this whole thing, and then share my opinions as I kind of read this stuff along, because it is interesting to me why people think he is the likely candidate. I mean, you look at guys like James Franklin, Billy Napier, Jimbo Fisher, Luke Fickell, Mark Stoops, Dave Aranda's even on this list, Lane Kiffin, and I understand, like, in a certain sense, why he's at the top, but at the same time, the guys below him are more proven. But maybe it's also because LSU wants to hire the next guy, and maybe people believe that Mel Tucker is the next quote-unquote guy. So first of all, let's check an article by 24/7 Sports. The link to this will be down below, as always. Title, LSU Coaching Search. Tigers will come after Mel Tucker hard, but unsure he leaves MSU, analyst believes. MSU opened up 7-0 and ranked 9th in the country this week. And once the LSU coaching job opened up, Spartans coach Mel Tucker was linked to it. Fox Sports analyst Joel Klatt, who I think is a very good one, said Tucker is going to be approached by LSU and would be shocked if the Tigers didn't look into him. However, he's unsure if Tucker will take the job. Speaking on the Herd with Colin Cowherd, Klatt said LSU is the far better job, but was not convinced Tucker would leave. And I do agree with this. I think that, you have kids, you have a family, and you have a program to build. MSU is by no means this perfect program, and I actually think in the next coming weeks when they face Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, who I think will be their undoing to their perfect record, I think that they will finish 9-3, 8-4, maybe 10-2. They're by no means a perfect program. All the Big Ten schools' schedules have been back-loaded. Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State are all going to eat each other in these next couple of weeks. And, you can say it's because I'm a Michigan fan. I happen to think for now that Ohio State and Michigan and possibly Penn State will come out on top. I don't think Michigan State will be on top. But that doesn't take away from the job he's done. Just because Michigan State doesn't win the Big Ten East doesn't mean he isn't a good coach. He's basically in year 1. Tucker comes in 2020. Not even a month later, boom, COVID hits. He doesn't even know his roster, guys, in 2020. Like, he has to learn about them through Zoom. Imagine how painful that was. Still managed to beat Michigan and Northwestern. And now, 7-0, 4-0 in conference. He's a good coach, but he has more to do. So if he wants to build more here, if he wants to kind of cement a legacy at this university, or just maybe build himself up better, and at the same time, keep his family in one singular location, and if he likes the environment here, and if the University of Michigan State decides to match what LSU matches with them, why not stay here? There's no point in leaving. He dominated the transfer portal. He's recruiting very well. So there are reasons for him to stay, but there are still reasons for him to leave. back to the article. Mel has done a great job this year, and he did it in a year in which no one expected Michigan State to be good because they had to do this with string and bandages, if you will. Lots of transfers, Kenneth Walker being one of them. It's that toughness and presence you're talking about, which was starting to help Colorado. Goes to Michigan State, he's toughened them up. And the only thing I would throw at you is we haven't seen him really win as a head coach. This is what Klatt is saying. We'll see how November winds up. I would disagree with that because Tucker was left with nothing from D'Antonio. He's already proven to be a guy who can get you, I'd say, 8-9 wins because the Big Ten East is still challenging, as we all know that Rutgers is getting tougher and Northwestern and Indiana are, tough in general in recent years. It's just what I think. So the 7-0 could turn into something very great. It could turn into something different. And I also agree with this. And he basically said, nonetheless, Tucker's going to get a hard run from LSU. And what I will say is if this does go south and they finish 8-4, I mean, it's a great year, but I don't know if LSU will take that. And maybe that's for the better of Tucker as well. Because honestly, LSU expects you to win national titles. If you go 8-4 in year 2, that's amazing. But LSU, I mean, look at what they just did to Coach O. And yes, a lot of it was locker room issues, among other things. But their past 3 coaches have won national titles. The past 2 of them have been fired. Fired. Coach O was fired 2 years after winning his national title. Les Miles, it was almost a decade after winning his national title. So that's different. But regardless here, LSU might want someone who they think is bigger. And at the same time, Mel, again, I mentioned this before, might want something more to build on, might want more stability rather than just rushing up the ladder to get the best job that turns up, which would be very good for State. And Klatt continues to go on and just talk about it. And yeah, which I do agree with the original statement. I think the Tigers will, give him the call. I don't know if they'd go after him hard. I think that if you're LSU, you might want, because he's been around for a while. It's not like you're hiring a 20, 30-year-old head coach. It's not like that at all. As Josh Pate said on 24/7 Sports on YouTube. But at the same time, he's only been a head coach for 3 years. So if LSU and their AD is known to make big hires, they might not even give him the call. I mean, I think they will, but they might have already gotten what would be considered a bigger name. Next, we're going to check out an article by SpartanAvenue.com. Title, Michigan State Football, 3 Things That Could Keep Mel Tucker in East Lansing. I'm mainly going to read just the titles of each of these 3 points. Familiarity with the Big Ten recruiting landscape. He says, I've heard the argument that Mel Tucker could go into Louisiana and dominate the recruiting landscape. And that is true. LSU dominates a loaded state of Louisiana, and Tucker would continue to do that. But what people don't realize is that he's a national recruiter anyway, so he's not just going to stick to one area. He's already familiar with recruiting in SEC territory, and he's also recruited in Michigan. He's doing really well with Michigan recruiting, saying this is a Michigan fan, and keeps, the Ohio, California, and Texas options open. I think he recruited a 4-star QB out of California as well. So just to say that he could recruit dominantly at LSU doesn't mean he can't do that at Michigan State. And Mel Tucker, going back to the jobs he's worked at Michigan State for 2 years, Ohio State for 4 years, and now he's back at Michigan State too. He worked a lot in the Big Ten early on, and then his NFL jobs worked with the Cleveland Browns and Chicago Bears, so he's been around the Great Lakes region and the Big Ten region, whether it be in his pro or college coaching career. Reason number 2, Alan Haler is the AD he wanted. And he actually played football at Michigan State. And I think that I'm not the biggest expert on 80s or stuff, but just knowing that tells me that he is probably better than the previous guy who kind of let Mark D'Antonio do his own thing. Part of being a head coach is being able to get the resources and support you need to succeed. And this is something else that a radio host, I think Mike Valenti, brought up, and you State fans should know about him. He said, Tucker basically has complete command of the football program here at State. And if he continues winning the way he does, even if it's just like 8, 9, maybe 10 games a year without winning much Big Ten championships, that's a lot for Michigan State. I mean, before Mark D'Antonio came around, consistently winning 8, 9, 10 games a year is unheard of before Mark D'Antonio. Like you'd probably have to go back to maybe parts of the Perlis years and adjust those 11, 10 regular season games to the current 12 regular season games to get anything close to that. So he has command here. He can basically do what he wants, as Mike Valenti said. You can't do that at LSU. I mean, look what they did with Coach O and others. They can put a very tight leash on you, and they will. They will, if you don't get them consistent national championship contending results. And with Nick Saban at Alabama, that's a very, very hard thing to do. And finally, reason number 1, he called MSU his quote-unquote dream job. Mel Tucker, Michigan State has been my dream job since 1997. This is not just another opportunity. When you hear coaches call their current schools their dream job, you have to take it with a grain of salt because he's probably just saying what fans want to hear. This is true. I mean, look at Urban Meyer with Notre Dame. It never happened, and it won't. But anyway, you have to take it with a grain of salt still, and that might be the case with Mel Tucker too. I mean, I can only imagine. He was only at Michigan State for, 2 years? Coached at Georgia for 3, Ohio State at 4. I guarantee you he would much rather like those jobs. But anyway, it's not the point here. We're talking about the now, not like 3, 4 years down the road. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the here and now with LSU. He says Michigan State's been his dream job since 1997. And what this means to me, the writer of this article, is that Michigan State is not a stepping stone for him. And it would take another massive offer or opportunity, he includes possibly the NFL, to get him to leave, which again are the options I mentioned, bigger schools that he used to coach at, like Ohio State, like Georgia, like Alabama, or the NFL, like him coaching at the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Cleveland Browns. I don't think it would be... That does give some confidence that he wouldn't leave after year 2. And yes, LSU is a massive offer. But the question is, does Tucker believe he's ready? And Tucker's obviously a guy who wants a challenge as well. But the Big Ten East is full of challenges. Absolutely full of challenges. I mean, you have to deal with Ohio State, you have to deal with Michigan, Penn State. And whether Michigan or Penn State are elite or not, it's a different discussion because they normally aren't. But they're still more talented than you are. They can hire $1 million coordinators with the snap of their fingers and the twiddling of their toes. It's a challenge to win in the SEC East if you aren't any of the 3 that I just mentioned. Unlike Michigan, unlike Penn State, and unlike Ohio State, you don't have 9, 8, or more wins built into your schedule automatically with the talent you have. So if Tucker can stay here, if this truly is his dream job and he continues on an upward trajectory, boy, he could really compete and have himself a tough, but for him and any other coach who likes to win, fun challenge in the Big Ten East. So I don't know. I don't know much. I'm not an insider or anything. I'm just a guy with a mic who loves college football, who would like to one day become, some kind of analyst. I'm just voicing my opinion. It's exactly what I'm doing. And as a Michigan fan here, you may think that I want him to leave, and the answer is I kind of don't. I like having my rivals, this is kind of a weird thing as a Michigan fan to say, I like them to be successful. I'd wish that they would go undefeated in every other game, minus maybe a couple, but just lose to us. That's all I care about. I like a competitive Big Ten East division. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Do you think Mel Tucker will leave for LSU and be hired there? And if so, how do you think he'll do? If you don't think he'll leave, how do you think he'll do at Michigan State in the future? Or who do you think will be hired instead by the Tigers? Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.